Hi there, my name is Tavar and I'm a fox. With how successful the last video was, I'm very excited to continue the series with your support. So let's get back to discussing the foundation of WoW, the races. Namely their abilities and how they perform in the current state of the game. There are some winners, some losers, but this ranking is mainly for fun. And again, I will be passing over the profession and the resistance racials, mainly because they will always be situational. And before we start the video, I do want to emphasize that this video is for fun, and not at all a suggestion of what races you should play. Only you can make that choice. Who cares what other people think? And with the alliance out of the way, we're moving on to the Horde. So come on and settle in, it's time to grab a snack and let's begin. And now we're starting off this list with arguably the most popular race of the Horde, the Blood Elves. They only have two racials we can discuss today, but let's get into it. Beginning with their most signature racial, Arcane Torrent. This ability removes one beneficial effect from all enemies within an 8-yard radius, with a 2-minute cooldown. It also gives you a small portion of your resource back on cast. In PvE, there are some scenarios where this can be useful considering that some NPC buffs in Mythic Plus can really hurt your team on higher keys, so being able to dispel those buffs can really save a run. That said, it's not as efficient as other purging spells and it's always going to stay on cooldown. For PvP, you'll never ever want to use this because you would have to get into melee range just to take off someone's random buff, which they'd probably get back in an instant. Overall, it's not as efficient as other purging spells, so I think this is going to be placed in the C tier. And next up, we have Arcane Acuity. This racial gives you a passive 1% crit boost which all classes can use. This is basically the Horde version of Viciousness. It's a solid stat boost, so it deserves a solid C tier. Not anything you can feel, but still good for hitting certain breakpoints. And now we're moving on to the Goblins, probably one of the most fun races of WoW. They have some really cool racials that tie into their culture, but unfortunately most of them are outdated and not at all useful. They do have one saving grace though, so let's start with that one. Starting off real strong, we have Rocket Jump. This ability propels you to jump forward in a short distance, with a very decent 1.5 minute cooldown. This is an instant S tier ability. What's really powerful about this one is that not only is it giving the player an unhindered boost of speed, but also negating knockback mechanics or taking fall damage as well. I would even rank this higher than Darkflight in terms of movement abilities because you have much more control in how you move compared to the distance you make. In PvE, there are so many cases where you can use this ability to your benefit. Any encounter that requires fast movements or anything that pushes you off the platform, easy, just use Rocket Jump and get back into the fight. It's an amazing engagement tool, especially for melees. Probably the easiest example of this is the Illyria counter. With how dangerous the transitions can be, if you get knocked towards your death, just rocket jump away. Stuck on a platform, just rocket jump onto the next. And that's just with one boss. This is a racial ability you would absolutely miss if you changed your race. Okay, how about PvP? Well, it's the same deal. However, if you need to jump off a platform, you can use the rocket jump to stop fall damage by essentially jumping again before you hit the ground, allowing you to transition to other areas of the map with very little damage taken, and with a boost of speed to catch players or run away from danger. There's just so many uses for this ability. Again, this is straight up S tier. Moving on to Rocket Jump's sister ability, we have Rocket Barrage. This ability deals small fire damage only at one enemy with a 1.5 minute cooldown. Talk about Whiplash, this is straight F tier. Its damage won't scale with anything, plus it shares a cooldown with Rocket Jump, which is literally not worth it in any scenario whatsoever. This is just a relic from designing goblins back in Cataclysm. You'll never use this in either PvE or PvP. Rocket Jump is literally just too good, and Blizzard doesn't care about balancing it, so this is going to be the first F tier on the list. Next up, we have Time is Money. This racial gives you a 1% haste stat buff. Again, something that everyone loves and needs, though nothing too impactful. C tier along with its elven brother. And then speaking about relics, we have another one that'll make your bones ache. We have Best Deals Anywhere. This one always allows you to have the best possible gold discounts anywhere, regardless of faction. So this is probably the absolute worst racial in the game. I know I mean hard on Lightforge, but I genuinely don't know how you can use this anymore. You see, back then, vendors would sell faction-related gear for gold. The more faction you got, the cheaper things would become. It didn't matter for the high-end stuff at Exalted because you were reaching it anyway, but for the lower tier stuff, it did save some gold. Nowadays, this concept is completely dead with how factions work in retail now, and especially with us using other currencies instead of just raw gold. So I think this has to be the absolute worst trade in the game ever. There are some extremely niche scenarios, for instance buying cheaper masks from certain vendors, But that's basically it, and even if you can use it for getting transmog from old factions, you could just wait until you hit Exalted to grab everything for cheap. This is F tier. Alright, and the last one on the list for goblins is the Pack Hobgoblin. This is a very fun and adorable trait. This perk allows you to call in your friend and use him as a bank for 1 minute, with a 30-minute cooldown. This is another case of the game evolving past the goblins, since we all have access to our banks through the warband system anyways. But hey, it still has some use for us opening up our personal one, and it's still cute. I'd say D tier. So goblins only have 2 good racials, the haste buff and the rocket jump. But honestly guys, rocket jump is so good that it elevates the whole race. So it's still a decent choice. And next up on our list are the orcs. They only have 3 racials like humans, but sometimes less is more. Let's get started. Starting off with one of their signature abilities, we have Blood Fury. This ability increases your attack/spell power by a good amount for 15 seconds with a decent 2-minute cooldown. For both PvE and PvP, this is a pretty solid ability for a burst window. Just pop it when it's time to offload your rotation for just a little bit more juice, especially during Bloodlust. Now this ability isn't going to keep you up at the top of the damage meters, but that's not what it's for. This ability is meant for taking down priority targets like a healer or a mom about to wipe the raid. And for that, I think it's pretty decent. I think this is a solid B tier racial. I'm not gonna take it up to the A tier because I don't think it's entirely game changing, but if you mess up your rotation or timing on your racial, then you have to wait 2 more minutes to use this ability again. So that's just completely wasted DPS. It's really dependent on the situation you're in, but it's completely fine for what its role is. Still B tier. Our second racial on the list, we have Command for the Orcs. This racial trait increases pet damage dealt by 1%. Unfortunately, this one is going straight to the D tier. If you're a pet class like an Unholy Death Knight, Hunters, or Demonology Warlocks, then sure, it's okay. But that's just it. It's completely worthless for any class that doesn't have a pet, and even then, that damage increase just isn't anything substantial. It's really just a worse mastery stat since it buffs DPS for certain classes only and only works on the pet's damage themselves. And for PvE and PvP, it's not really gonna make a difference. I think it deserves a solid D tier. And then moving on from that disaster of a trait, we now have Hardiness. This perk reduces the duration of stuns by an additional 20%. This is one of the most iconic racials in the game. When a perk has been tinkered for over 2 decades, you know it's good. And this is even better than the human version since it puts you back into the fight much more faster through those follow-up stuns. In PvE, there are some limited use cases, but when it does have its use, it's very strong. For tanks, being able to get out of stuns faster is a life-saving event for you and your groups in raids and Mythic Plus. In PvP, this is a hilariously strong perk. We've memed about PvP being a stunfest, so just imagine being able to shrug off them faster than any other race in the game. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't think I really have to go into deep discussion about this. It's just amazing to be able to get your bearings back as fast as possible when every second matters in an arena or battleground. And there's no cooldown attached to it. It's always active. You basically turn into an unstoppable force by the end of it all. Instant S tier. Compared to humans, orcs definitely dominate them as their counterpart. Next up we have the Taurens, the first furry bait race of WoW, and despite them being massive, their traits are fairly average. First up we have Brawn, which is basically the Horde version of Might of the Mountain. It gives you 2% more crit damage and healing. Again, a pretty solid stat boost for passive play. My thoughts haven't changed since last time. Any class can use this passive, so it's going straight to the middle of the road B tier. Alright, and now for another trait, we have Endurance for Taurens. This passive increases your stamina based on your level. This is one of those things that immediately go, oh hey, that's actually pretty decent. But the main issue with this is how bursty endgame PvE and PvP can be. It's not about how much damage you take, it's about how you reduce it. Shields, barriers, etc, etc. A very flat health increase just won't help you survive anything. Honestly, I want to say F tier. The first real stat passive that's just genuinely bad. At least with Heroic Presence, it's usable, but just raw stamina isn't going to help you against 1v1s or soaking mechanics in raids. And next up, we have War Stomp. This ability stuns up to 5 enemies for 2 seconds with a 1.5 minute cooldown. It also has a half-second cast time and isn't affected by global cooldowns. In PvE, this is a pretty solid ratio since it's a free AoE stun with a lot of utility in raids and Mythic Plus. Obviously to stop NPCs from casting nasty spells or to stop mobs dead in their tracks. Pretty amazing in that regard. In PvP, this can be a great offensive option to stop healers for just one brief moment while you snag the kill. 2 seconds might sound short, but it feels like an eternity when you're trying to win a game. Defensively, it's not really good simply because it does have a cast time, so if you're already dying, you're just delaying the inevitable. This is just a solid ratio and it belongs in the A tier. I really can't give it S tier simply because the cast time in the small radius can make it awkward to use, especially if you're a caster, but there's still some great utility and it gives Torrens a great edge in crowd control. And now we have the trolls. Everyone loves trolls. Hilariously enough, they're basically the orc racials with some extra flavor. So let's get into them. Their first racial trait is Beast Slaying. This trait grants you 20% more experience from killing beasts. Not really much to say about this one. I'm actually gonna put it F tier, so even though it's way better than Demon's Bane, since there are beasts everywhere, this racial stops being useful at max level and you get most of your experience from quests and completing dungeons. So it's just not really as impactful as an ability and just kinda exists. Solid F tier. Next up we have Berserking. This is a really insane ability. It increases your melee, range, and spell haste by 10% for 12 seconds or a respectable 3-minute cooldown. Guys, this is literally free bloodlust for all classes without sharing the cooldown of an actual one. This is gonna be S tier. Unlike a regular lust where you only have the one, you basically have 3 mini bloodlusts you can cast in an encounter for rushing down phases. It is straight up a better Blood Fury because you get more cast off in a small amount of time, which pairs greatly with your trinkets and other buffs. Instant S tier. It's just too good and it deserves to be at the very top. For the trolls, we have another passive which is the Voodoo Shuffle. This racial trait reduces the duration of all movement impairing effects by 20%. Just like Hardiness, this is really strong. It's another passive ability that reduces the crowd control effects for your character, great for melee classes. In PvE, it's not really a PvE trait, but there are and will always be certain scenarios where this passive can be good, just to help your character move around the boss arena and re-engage in the fight. Especially when Blizzard likes to make snares do damage, meaning you'll take less total damage in that regard. For PvP, same deal with Hardiness, you don't have to worry about it sharing a cooldown with a PvP trinket, it's always active and you can stay focused on what you're doing. One less point on your hotbar is kind of a big deal, and you'll always hit those diminishing returns on snares and roots faster than any other race with an exception with the gnomes. Overall, S tier. Another amazing trait for the trolls, but unfortunately, we're not going to be ending on a high note. Alright, the last one on the list for them is Regeneration. This racial trait increases your health regeneration rate by 10%, and 10% of that health regeneration continues through combat. This ability has not had a single update since the launch of the game, and that's kind of insane. But yeah, this is just completely useless because it was designed purely for the launch of WoW. The game is just so fast, this perk will not save you through any content in the game. This is easily F tier, but it's super hard to decide where to even put that in that category. I think it's because it's still technically usable. I'm gonna put it above Best Deals Anywhere, but that's a very low bar because that racial trait doesn't even work anymore in the game. So yeah, trolls are really just all over the place with regards to the racials, but they still have some of the best ones in the game, a very solid choice for a race. And now it's time to cover the edgiest race in WoW, the Forsaken, the true race of PvP mains. Though I think their racials are unfortunately average or just not really that good. But let's continue on. First up we have Will of the Forsaken. This ability removes any charm, fear, or sleep effect, and this shares a 30-second cooldown with similar effects or trinkets. In PvE, I unfortunately just don't think this will ever be useful. Blizzard is pretty careful with their effects, and there are different types of fear and charm spells. If it was ever found useful, they'll likely patch it unfortunately, because these spells are typically tied to the core mechanics of a fight. If I'm wrong and this had any precedent in endgame PvE, please let me know in the comments below. But I just cannot find an example of it really working in the endgame. In PvP, it's still a decent racial ability. These effects are really nasty, and being able to break that with a respectable 2-minute cooldown is very strong, especially if you're being crowd controlled as a healer. I think it's gonna go to the low B tier. I just don't think this should be rated any higher because of how limited in scope this racial can be. But also in group fights, someone is very likely to break those status effects purely from cleave. But yeah, it kinda squeezes itself into the B tier. Alright, and time for the Forsaken signature ability, we have Cannibalize. This ability regenerates 7% of your health and mana every 2 seconds for 10 seconds total. This one only works on humanoids and undead corpses, and it has a 2-minute cooldown. You are just way better off just eating food from vendors instead of using this ability, or even using Recuperate to heal back up. There are some scenarios where you use this, especially when you're stuck in combat, but other than rage baiting other players, there's not really much to talk about this one. This is just straight F tier. Alright, and the last perk to go over, and that's Touch of the Grave. This trait gives your attacks a chance to drain a target's health, dealing shadow damage and healing you for that same amount. Additionally, you can breathe underwater infinitely. It has a 20% proc chance with a 15-second internal cooldown. This is just basically a flavor trait for them. The damage isn't really that good, and there's not really much to talk about. It being a passive damage perk won't really impact anything in PvE or PvP, but it can scale with certain classes like Shadow Priest and Unholy DK's Mastery. But that's still a relatively small group that can benefit from it. It has underwater breathing though, so I mean that's still nice for certain activities. I'd give it a pretty safe D tier ranking. It's limited in scope, but it's still useful. But it's always going to have a small impact on your gameplay. And now we're finally onto the allied races. This is a pretty big video, but there's still plenty to talk about. Starting off with the Nightborn. First off, we have Magical Affinity. This increases magical damage by 1%. Pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to actually rank this in the D tier, and here's why. If you're playing melee, this perk is completely worthless because you're going to have very limited abilities that do magical damage. But also for the healers out there, you'd rather just have a stat boost that affects healing and damage spells. This is purely for raw caster damage, though it is a very small increase, D tier. Next up, we have a quality of life ability, Cantrips. This ability summons a personal mailbox that lasts 1.5 minutes with a 10-minute cooldown. Emphasis on personal, because no one else can use this. This is going to be another D tier perk, but still higher than Affinity since everyone can use it. We already have toys and now a mount that gives mailbox options to anyone, so it's already been power crept in utility, but at least it still has a 10-minute cooldown. That's okay. Finally, for a good trait for the Nightborn, and it's their last one, Arcane Pulse. This ability, when cast, does a small amount of damage, but it snares enemies by 80% for 8 seconds within a small 8-yard radius. And PvE, extremely strong for dealing ads that could wipe a raid if they hurt a certain area of the arena. Blizzard always loves encounters with this design. Chimeras comes to mind. In PvP, 8 seconds feels like an eternity. And there's no limit to how many players you can snare with this. It's good for casters trying to get away from melee, and for melee this is the ultimate chase ability. 80% movement debuff is basically a root at that point, and they're not getting away from you. This is the one saving grace for Nightborn, straight S tier. This is a very strong snare effect with no real limitations, and not much to say. Moving on to the next race. And now we have Torrents but with bigger horns. High mountain Torrents are actually pretty good. Their signature ability is Bull Rush. This ability allows you to charge forward, knocking all enemies down for 1.5 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown. This is straight up a better version of War Stomp. So instead of a cast time, it's instant, there's no limitation on how many people you can stun with, and it's also a movement ability with no hindrance on how far you can go with it. Holy cow. This is S tier all the way in both PvE and PvP. There's just no real downside with this ability, and there's so much utility baked into it. It's both an offensive and defensive option for all roles, an amazing ratio. Another passive we have is Rugged Tenacity. This trait reduces damage taken based on 0.9% of a person's stamina. This damage reduction is just too small for PvE and PvP. If you want to take less damage, you would just pop a defensive and just hug your healer. And the next passive on the list we have Mountain Tier. This passive just gives you 1% more versatility. Unlike Crit and Haste, versatility isn't anything people build towards. This stat just slightly increases your raw damage output along with your defensives. I think this one is just a very low C tier. It's just okay for a free stat boost. And then for the last one, we have Waste Not Want Not. This passive grants you a chance to loot additional meat and fish. This perk is mainly used for making gold at the start of an expansion, or leveling up cooking for yourself. It's really just a free perk for the High Mountain Torrents. Since it's purely for professions, I'll let it slide in the D tier. It's useful, but nothing impactful for gameplay. Still a nice freebie though. Now moving on to the Orc's cousins, we have the Maghar. Honestly, a mixed bag. First up we have their ability, Ancestral Call. This racial ability provides a massive stat boost to your 2 highest secondary stats for 15 seconds and in a reasonable 2-minute cooldown. It's another one of those racial abilities that's great for bursting down targets, and honestly kinda satisfying to use depending on what stats you focus on. Obviously, nothing can beat having a mini Bloodlust, but it definitely beats out Blood Fury in that same category. We've already talked about the scenarios of use in both PvE and PvP, so let's save some time. I think this goes in between both abilities in the A tier. It's a fairly strong ability with some cool visuals to go with it. Alright, and that was the high note, and it kinda goes downhill from here. Next one is Open Skies. This passive gives you 10% more mountain speed. In PvE, we're already so fast with skywriting that you're not really gonna feel this. In PvP, however, that's actually kinda huge for Battlegrounds. Just being able to reach flags and towers faster than any other race is kind of amazing, especially when setting up for an engagement. I kinda wanna give it B tier. Obviously, once the team fighting starts, then this perk becomes irrelevant, but with the right player, this could save some games. So yeah, B tier. And now for the first disappointment, we have Savage Blood. This trait reduces the duration of poisons, diseases, and curses by 10%. Having them drop 10% faster won't really save your life in most scenarios, but also healers are gonna remove those dots anyways for you. So it's just not really relevant, straight D tier. And for the last trait, we have Sympathetic Vigor. This racial passive increases pet health by 10%. I mean, I guess for solo play pet classes, it's useful. If you're doing something like a Ritual Site or a Delve as a Warlock or a Hunter, then you are gaining some value in it. But that's kind of where it ends. In PvP, no one's gonna waste time killing your pet. And if you have no pet, it's useless. I'm actually gonna put this in the straight high F tier. It's just kinda there to mirror the orc's pet damage ratio, but with no real benefit in the endgame. At least for the Maghar, their ability is pretty strong. And now onto the Zandalari. I'm actually really excited to talk about the racials. Let's get the dud out of the way first. City of Gold. This increases gold earned from creatures by 2%. This is actually F tier. Okay, hear me out. We all like gold, but in reality, most gold we get these days is from quests, professions, and selling trash. And this only drops from humanoid and mini-boss NPCs. This is mainly a flavor trait, and you'll barely make any gold from this. It's basically a worse version of the High Mountains Waste Not Want Not, because you will be making more gold from it from selling the extra resources. So it's straight F tier. Next up, we have arguably the best racial in the game, Embrace of the Loa. This racial ability is actually 6 abilities in one, and you get to choose which one you want in a 5-day cooldown. To keep things short and simple, I'm gonna list them and give them a summary of each. First one is Akunda. Gives your healing spells the ability to heal for more. Pretty solid for healers. Second one is Bwansamdi. Gives your damaging abilities additional shadow damage and heals you for 100% of the damage done. Literally stolen from the Forsaken. This one's okay. Third one is Gonk. Great for transmog farming, but other activities, it's not really worth losing the extra DPS or healing. Fourth, we have Kimball. Gives your damaging abilities a chance to make your target bleed for 6 seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times. This one's actually kinda interesting for PvP. It's an extra dot for any class to put pressure on. And in PvE, it can have some use purely for classes that do suffer from mobility issues. It's just free damage you don't have to worry about. The fifth, we have Kragwa. Taking damage has a chance to increase your maximum health and armor. It's a decent choice for tanks. And lastly, we have Paku. Gives your damaging abilities a chance to increase critical strike by 4% for 12 seconds. This is the default one players start with, and for good reason, since it's something everyone can use. Wow, obviously S tier. This is probably the most powerful racial in the game. It's basically a way of mitigating downsides with your class and spec, and that's amazing. Okay, now we have Pterodactyl Swoop. Reduces your falling speed for 2 minutes on an insane 15-minute cooldown. This one really sucks. It's only used in the open world, but it's basically a worse Goblin Glider since they have a 3-minute cooldown, not 15. And also, Drakthir have this effect permanently. This is just not good. Instant F tier. There is no point in ever using this thing. And finally, we have Regenerating. This ability regenerates 50% of your maximum health over 6 seconds. Interrupted by direct damage, but not dot damage. It also has a 3-minute cooldown and needs to be channeled. The more I think about it, the less I actually like it. In PvE, it's mainly for solo content, but you already have Recuperate, which is basically the same thing. In PvP, you'd rather just eat food to heal back up to full and gain mana too. It's better than Cannibalize since you can go in a corner and just pop this ability, but good PvP players aren't gonna let you get away with that. I think this is another F tier. I just don't see many opportunities to use this thing, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things because Embrace of the Loa is just massively strong. Alright, and last race on the list, and the ultimate furry bait race, we have the Volperas. Volperas definitely have some of the best racials in the game, and I'm excited to go over them. First up on our list, we have Make Camp and Return Camp. You make a camp at any location outdoors with a 10-minute cooldown. It's basically a portable inn, where you get rested XP and can log off instantly at that spot, and then you can return to this camp every 60 minutes. This racial is the ultimate quality of life feature in the game. If anything interrupts your rare farming or questing, dragging you across the world, then you can just pop this ability and return back to it when it's done. Or, you can also put this outside the Orgrimmar portal room just for convenience, which is great because you can also have your Hearthstone set somewhere else. This is a straight S tier ability. It's just so convenient for any type of player in the game, and you will use this an absolute ton if you're going around in the open world. And next up we have Alpaca Saddlebags. This passive gives you 8 more slots in your backpack. Also S tier. I mean, come on, it's free bag slots. I know it seems just wrong to put it above actual abilities, but everyone loves more bag slots, and this is something everyone will use. And also remember that some of these abilities are basically just 1% increases in the damage meter. People spend thousands of gold every expansion just for the 2 extra slots in their bags. If the community had voted to either take Blood Fury or 8 bag slots, I think you already know which one would win. So yeah, I stand by it. I think Alpaca Saddlebags is S tier, but it's gonna be in the bottom purely for fairness. And now for another racial ability, we have Bag of Tricks. This ability can either slow an enemy by 80% for 4 seconds, or give an ally a 20% movement speed buff for 4 seconds in a 1.5 minute cooldown. This is also going straight to the S tier, basically because of how much utility this can provide in both PvE and PvP. The 80% slow is basically a root, like we mentioned with Arcane Pulse, though Arcane Pulse obviously still beats it since it's an AoE snare, and the 28% movement speed boost isn't anything too special, but for slow classes it's still really nice to have. You can also use this on your tanks and healers to get them back in the fight faster. There's so many opportunities to use this. Combined with the short cooldown, I think it goes straight to the S tier. Another winner for the Rat Gang. And then lastly for the list, we have Nose for Trouble. When you first take damage from an enemy, reduce that damage by 5% of your maximum health. This one's actually kinda average. For PvP, this is obviously useless since any hit would trigger this passive in team fights, and that's it. You'll never use it again. For PvE, this is somewhat useful during raid encounters when caster ads would spawn. The dragons in Illyria come to mind where they constantly spawn ads to target down the raid. And so this trait is always active and it's great for reducing passive damage. And the same deal for Mythic Plus, we are always taking damage from ads throughout the entire run. That said, it only triggers a few times during polls and the damage reduction is a small bonus to your health. I think this deserves a solid middle of the road C tier. It's good, but it has its limits. Woof, there was a lot more to talk about the Horde than the Alliance. Again, if you have any ideas what should be placed where, please leave a comment down below. Now, even though there's very likely to be another allied race coming the Last Titan, I still think I'll make a neutral tier list in the future, just to complete this series. If we do get an allied race, I'll probably just make a separate video on them. Regardless, I'm gonna get some rest. Thank you all for watching and I hope you all take care.